Hey everyone, this is Roman Prokopchuk, and this is the Digital Savage Experience podcast. Today I have with me Annette Ferguson. Annette is the CEO of Annette Co. She helps entrepreneurs find clarity in their numbers, increase their wealth, and take more money home in their pockets. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me, Roman. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. So tell me a little bit about your journey. How did you get to where you are today?
Yeah, sure. So I basically didn't think I would be an accountant. That's kind of where it starts. I knew from a relatively young age that I wanted to run a business. And at school, I was told, well, why don't you try studying accounting and finance at university, because it will be a great grounding for you, a great kind of plinth basically to have as you grow your business. Thought, okay, yeah, that's pretty logical. That sounds like a good idea. So I went to university, studied accountancy and finance, went on to do my professional qualification after university and become a chartered accountant. And whilst I was in that role, because you do part of it training and part of it on the job. And whilst I was doing that, I really enjoyed the work I was doing. To be honest, I enjoyed dealing with the clients and all that kind of thing. And so when I qualified, I still felt like it wasn't the right time for me to start my business. I was still pretty young at that point. So I moved from Edinburgh in Scotland to London to work in banking at that point. I worked for Goldman Sachs in investment banking, got a, much bigger job than I was used to, a lot more responsibility. And I hated I didn't hate the job, the actual work I really enjoyed. I hated everything else about it. In reality, the culture was just not me. It was a massive culture shock, shifting from a small accounting practice in Edinburgh to, one of the largest investment banks in the world. And it was just not the right place for me and my personality. So I did not enjoy that at all, but I stuck with it. I didn't want to have lots of changes of jobs on my CV. I was still young and I thought that was going to be a bad thing. So stuck with it for about a year and a half. And after that, I moved into the oil and gas industry, which I really loved doing, again, a financial controller type role. And I really enjoyed my time there. But every time I moved jobs, I still had this kind of yearning to have my own business. I was never fully satisfied with what I was doing. So it got to a point where I actually was getting married, and it was kind of like, is it the right time to start thinking about setting up this business? And so I had all these sort of thoughts around, but what is it going to be? What am I going to do? And I thought back in my career and thought, well, what have I done that I've really loved and enjoyed? And the answer was, when I was training and doing my chartered accounting training, that is the role that I loved the best. And, for the reasons that I mentioned, meeting clients, learning about their business, all those kinds of stuff is the stuff that I really, really love. And so thought, hang on a minute, why don't I just start an accounting firm? And so that's basically what I did at that time. I started it whilst I was still in employment. It was actually against my employment contract to do that. But in all honesty, I wanted to see if I was any good at it. I wanted to see if I could get clients and what that looked like. So I did that for a little while. And as coincidence would have it, we got to a few months in, and I said to my husband one weekend, I'm really starting to struggle with timing, because I was basically trying to run this business in the evenings, weekends, vacation days, lunch hours in the car park, on my phone, all that kind of stuff. And I said to him, I'm really struggling. I don't know what we need to do here, because I wasn't making enough money in the business to completely, I wasn't covering my salary, but still the time was just a real nightmare for me, particularly because in that point in time, this is nearly 12 years ago now. So back at that point in time, it was face-to-face networking is how you got clients. Social media had really not come into its own at that point. It was starting, but it really wasn't as prevalent as it is now in people's lives. And so I was doing a lot of face-to-face networking. I was having to take like half days from work to go networking and all that kind of stuff. And it just wasn't sustainable. And so we'd said, okay, maybe you should speak to your manager about perhaps going part-time, like, run it by him, see what how the conversation goes. So I said, okay, fine. So this was at the weekend, and Monday morning I walked into the office and my manager did that, Annette, can I have a word, please? And you think, what have I done? What's happened? And he took me into an office and he said, it's come to my attention that you have been running a business on the side. That's clearly against your employment contract. Therefore, I have to say to you, you either need to stop that with immediate effect, or I'll expect your letter of resignation on my desk. So I said, okay, well, I'm not going to stop running the business. This is what I want to do. I'll tender my resignation. And the great thing was, at the end of that meeting, he said, I think this is great for you. I'm really happy. I think you'll do really well. So it was left on a nice term, at least with that. So there I was out in the big bad world, running my business, and trying to get clients, doing a lot of face-to-face networking, starting to dabble in the social media platforms that were coming up at that time. So Facebook was just starting to kind of get some traction as a business platform. Twitter was around quite a lot. They were the two that I was mainly using at that point in time, as well as face-to-face networking. And then started to grow the client base. So working from home and growing my client base that way, dealing with, at that point in time, pretty much the kind of bog standard accounting-y type stuff, compliance work, tax work, that kind of thing. And that continued for around about 5 years as I was growing and growing and growing. So, I hit the sort of milestone points that people like to have, the 6-figure business, et cetera, et cetera. But, and I had a few team members start to come on board and that kind of things. But I was actually really struggling at that point in time, because although the business I was able to generate revenue and sales, actually I was taking home very, very little from the business. I certainly had not replaced my corporate salary, despite us, having a decent level of revenue. And I knew that something needed to change. Something just wasn't working. And as, again, coincidence happened, and I fell across a book called Profit First by Mike Michalowicz. Now, I'm a massive, massive reader of business books. I have been since my business started, and I love it. So, I consume a lot of information, but I picked up this book and I thought, holy moly, hang on a second. This is amazing. And for those of the listeners that don't know, Profit First basically is fundamentally a cash management strategy. It essentially helps a business become more profitable, and it makes sure that you've got money set aside for tax and all those kinds of things. And so before I got to the end of the book, I basically was emailing them and saying, like, how do I get certified in this? I need this for my own life, and I know my clients need it too. And they said, whoa, first of all, you have to implement it in your own business. You can't just be certified straight away. So I said, okay, fine. So that's what I did. I implemented it in my own business, and it changed things for me. It changed the profitability. It changed the take home. It was just an incredible turnaround. And 18 months later, I actually became the sole breadwinner in our family. My husband left his full-time job to look after our, at that point, one very small child, and I was pregnant with our second. And so it was a big turning point with my business, because not only did it change things for me in terms of the finances of my business, at that point, we also started helping clients with it as well. And that's when we moved away from being a really kind of bog standard accounting firm to one that really kind of is much more future focused and forward driven, and helps clients focus on profitability much, much more than might kind of be traditional as well. And almost the rest is history at that point, to be honest. The business has continued to grow now as well, continued to bring on staff all the time. I've now got, an operations team dealing with the accounts and bookkeeping side of things, and a marketing team as well. And we're starting to build a sales team too. So and we all still work from home actually too. So I have always built the business that anybody in the team can work from anywhere in the world. So, when COVID times hit, actually it meant that we were really resilient and able to cope with that. And actually the business has grown incredibly over this time, I think, as well, because a lot of accounting firms struggled to adapt, because they had, traditional offices with basements full of paper files. And actually, when everyone kind of had to go home, there was massive disruption to their practices. Whereas to us, it made little to no difference at all for most of us.
Yeah, that's awesome. And the fact that you kind of, some people are afraid to make that jump if they have something that they do on the side, like a side
Mm,
hustle. They may keep it a side hustle, or they may stay in a corporate structure working with, for someone else, which I don't dissuade if it's the right
yeah,
situation and opportunity for your life. But you were kind of given that ultimatum kind
it
of.
was.
And
Yeah,
it
it was
was
a
nice.
turning point.
Yeah, and it was
Mhm.
nice leaving on good terms because I thought that
It
story
was.
was going to go a different way. And I'm a big proponent of, working remotely and kind of
Mm,
the virtual working landscape. I've been remote for about 5 years, and it,
mm.
it enables you to get the right talent. Because, like you said, if
Yeah.
you're forced to a brick and mortar location, obviously you're kind of guided by the talent in that locale. I mean,
Mm,
I would say the furthest I would probably drive for a job, maybe 30 miles, 40 miles in terms
yeah.
of the US for commute. And then you're left in terms of the talent pool all around the world. There's some competent people out there with a lot of skills that you can really tap. So if you have that virtual format and
Yeah.
companies that had either, selective virtual where you can be in the office and working
Mm.
from home or anywhere, I mean, I think they've adapted better to what's happened in 2020 and is continuing in 2021.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have team, yeah, all over the world, and it's really great. It's really positive because, like you say, why wouldn't you want the best people? It doesn't actually matter where they live. Like, why wouldn't you want to tap into those people and their brains and their expertise and their amazingness?
Yeah, I agree. So, what motivates you to succeed? Obviously, those motivations may have changed over time with variables in your life, but what currently motivates you to succeed?
I'm naturally a very driven person. I'm naturally a very competitive person. So part of that is definitely kind of competing with myself. And part of it, I would be silly to ignore is ego as well, without a doubt. But the other bit of it is, as most people, I'm sure, my family as well. I have two small children. They're currently age 4 and 6, and I want the best for them as well.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's healthy to have that competition, and that
Mm.
competition, I think, on my part, is competition with myself.
Oh, me
So
too. Yeah,
yeah, so I'm not,
completely.
yeah, I'm not saying like,
Mm,
yeah, let me be competitive with everybody in my
yeah,
industry, but I try to kind of wake up and become a better person than I was the day before, and kind of
completely.
keep that drive because sometimes you reach a certain level of income or success, and you tend to kind of take your foot off the gas
Mm,
pedal because it's
yeah.
it's comfort. So I think I try to stay in this, little space of, discomfort because I think kind of the
Mhm.
greatest foundations or the greatest innovations happen in like somewhat of a chaotic state when nothing
Yeah.
is perfect or comfortable.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm completely the same. Yeah, the biggest person I'm in competition with by far is myself.
And family obviously is a big driver. My family situation has really changed over time.
Mm,
Like since June of 2018, my
mm.
wife and I have fostered 25 children. So it's hectic in terms
Wow.
of adjusting currently five under the age of four and then two dogs.
Oh
So,
my goodness.
so
I do
it,
not envy five under the age of four. Wow. That's
so
incredible.
yeah, so it's an interesting dynamic. And I think people that haven't experienced biological children or had
Mm,
children in their life in terms of caring for them, they don't
mm,
necessarily understand that dynamic in terms of being an entrepreneur, running a company, and
mhm.
trying to, have a family life as well. So that's kind of a
Yeah.
tough juggle there too.
It is absolutely, and possibly more so at the moment for many, many people. With I don't know exactly what the situation is exactly where you are, but with us in the UK, we're in lockdown just now, so the kids are not in school. Throughout the whole of the UK, everyone is trying to homeschool. Most people are not allowed to go to their place of work, so everyone is also at home. So you've got two. In many households, you've got two adults and multiple children all trying to access the internet at the same time, work at the same time, etc. And it certainly has thrown us some curveballs in the last year, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot of adapting.
Yeah, yeah.
So, what's one thing you may have seen as a weakness in yourself in the past that you've turned around and utilized as a strength today?
Oh, that's a really, really tough question. I certainly have I am a recovering perfectionist, for sure. I'm also I'm going to say recovering, but my husband might disagree. I like to be in control of things. So those two things can be a real challenge when you're running a business, because as you grow, you can't be in control of everything. Well, I mean, you can anyway, let's face it, because there's so many variables. But as you grow, particularly, you need to relinquish control on many things. Otherwise, nothing gets done. And also, you can't have your hand in everything and make everything perfect before it goes out the door. It's just not possible. So for me, kind of learning to step back from those things has been a really interesting learning curve, for sure. And but I also feel like having a dose of it every so often is not a bad thing either.
Yeah, I think that the control thing comes into play anyone that starts their own business or is an entrepreneur, because that's their baby. They want to
Mm,
kind of be involved in everything and do everything. And to begin with, that may be the case in terms of scaling the business and building a business, but you can truly grow and scale and hire
yeah,
a team if you put everything on your shoulders. Eventually, you have to figure out what you're able to offboard and what role
yeah,
you want in the business as well, and then develop processes. So when you obviously hire somebody, that role is clearly defined and you know expectations, and that person knows expectations, because sometimes a company
completely.
hires without really that role in
Mm,
mind in terms of expectations, and then it becomes this hybrid role, or they expected one thing from the person they hired and they're
yeah.
looking for something else. So I think having a clear framework and obviously a set of processes is key when you're starting to scale as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you don't start giving the other people in your team responsibility, you start being the bottleneck in your business as well. And so you actually, you know, you strangle the growth yourself, even though that might not be your intention whatsoever. But that is what ends up happening if you try and control all the bits on your own still.
Yeah, I agree. So what's one thing in terms of advice you can leave with the audience, personal or professional?
So in terms of professional advice, I would definitely say, watch the cash. For the business owners, watch the profit, make sure that your business is in a position that it can deliver you a take home that you need, want, deserve, desire, whichever word you want to put in there, because you should be, as a business owner, your highest paid member of staff. You shouldn't be paying anyone else more than you, because you put the blood, sweat, and tears in.
Yeah, I agree. And it's one of those things like understanding your worth and obviously
Mm,
like everything you have in terms of like the moving parts. So it's your baby, and technically you make the decisions in terms of
yeah.
where to take the company. Sometimes obviously if the company falls apart or has to pivot, that's all on you. So that
Mm.
extra stress and everything else you carry on your shoulders at the end of the day.
Completely, exactly. And you deserve to be paid for that, quite frankly.
Yeah, and like you said, it's situational. Like if somebody has the opportunity, they may not necessarily have a family to support or what their
Mhm.
finances they look like.
Yeah,
Depending on the business, they may reinvest everything in the business and like
they
live
may.
lean. But obviously,
Mm.
if you have a family or your situation where you're taking care of relatives or loved ones, or you have something else going on, it has to be the right fit for you in that situation.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, nothing against reinvesting in the business as long as it's done from a place of strategy as opposed to overspending. So I think that's a real key, that people will often say, "Oh, I'm just reinvesting," but actually they've not done is they've not gone, made a profit, taken the money, reinvested it. They've just overspent in the moment. And that can be where you start falling over and you start ending up not having enough money sitting in the business, either for yourself or for other things.
Yeah, I agree. So
Mm.
I really appreciate you stopping by today. Can you let the audience know how they can find you?
Yeah, absolutely. So, one great place is my Facebook group, which is the Uncover Wealth Community. And I also have a podcast, Uncover Wealth Radio. So, those two places are probably great places for them to check out.
Awesome. Thanks again for stopping by.
Thank you so much, Roman. It's been lovely speaking to you.
You too. Take care.
Take care.